The Utah Jazz started off the NBA season scorching hot, and while they're still a solid team, they definitely have come back to earth. They're 19th in win percentage, 6th in points per game, 16th in field goal percentage, 5th in rebounding, 5th in blocks, and 24th in defensive rating. And while they have a decent all-around team, they're led by Lauri Markkanen. But just how far can he lead the Jazz? Let's find out. Markkanen is averaging 25 points, 8 rebounds, and 2 assists while shooting 40% from 3, 50% from the field, and 87% from the free throw line. So yeah, he's putting up borderline superstar numbers. And the great thing is, he's only 25 years old, only just now approaching the prime of his career. But now let's dive into his game, starting with his inside scoring. And he's not an elite post scorer like a Joel Embiid, Anthony Davis, or Nikola Jokic, but he's still pretty good down there. He's shooting 70% on 5 attempts per game, and he's also top 30 in points off of cutting to the rim, which is great given the fact that he's more perimeter-centric. But he does have sneaky athleticism on the inside, and sometimes you can forget that he's 7 foot tall, because again, he's normally out around the three-point line. But once he gets inside, you are quickly reminded just how big and long Markkanen really is. He uses his length to stretch over opponents effortlessly, and he's really just a matchup nightmare. When it comes to the mid-range, he's shooting 46%, but it's only on like 1 attempt per game, so he really doesn't focus on the mid-range at all most nights. And that's okay, because he has an amazing 3-ball. And you know the saying, a 3 is worth more than 2. He's not just a decent or solid shooting big man, he's one of the best three-point shooters in general. And when you factor in attempts, he's second in the NBA, only behind Klay Thompson in catch and shoot percentage. So yeah, whenever you're only one spot behind one of the greatest shooters ever, you're definitely an elite shooter from deep. And again, we can't stress this enough, he's a 7-foot big man shooting over 40% from 3 on half a dozen attempts. No other big comes even remotely close to Markkanen in this category. He has a fluid and kinda sneaky quick release that's just made for elite catch and shoot players. And of course, add in the fact of his height and you now have an uncontestable 3-point jump shooter. And you know what, for those who are on the fence about whether or not he's the best shooting big in the NBA, let's compare his shooting to other all-star caliber bigs. Julius Randle is shooting 34% on 8 attempts per game. Joel Embiid is shooting 34% on 3 attempts. Brook Lopez is shooting 37% on 5. Nikola Jokic is shooting 40% from 3, but it's only on 2 attempts. Jaren Jackson Jr. is shooting 34% on 4 attempts. Nikola Vucevic is shooting 34% on 4.5 attempts, and must we go on? So hopefully now it is painfully obvious he can stretch the floor. But what else does he do at a high level? Well, for one, he's a really good rebounder, averaging 8.6 rebounds per game. And remember, he's perimeter oriented, so this is a pretty good average for him. And plus, he's averaging nearly 10 rebounds over his last 7 games, so he can get pretty monstrous on the boards when he wants to. And just before we wrap up his offense, we have to briefly talk about his free throw shooting. He's shooting 87% from the line on 6 attempts per game. And when you factor in attempts, he's the 23rd best free throw shooter in the entire league. Filter this stat by forwards only, and he's 15th. And if he attempted more foul shots, like all of the players in front of him, he would without a doubt be much higher. But now let's move on to his defense. He's averaging just 0.6 steals and 0.6 blocks per game, but that doesn't really tell the whole story because he's a solid all-around defender. He's pretty good in zone coverages and even when guarding smaller players out on the perimeter. He certainly isn't an elite defender, but he's solid for sure. On the inside, he's very disciplined and clearly leans on his fundamentals. When contesting shots, he often goes up vertically with both hands in the air, and his length and mobility really helps deter shots and just makes it really difficult to get a quality shot off. But now, let's take a look at some of Lauri's teammates and the Jazz as a whole. First up, Jordan Clarkson, who's averaging 20 points, 4 rebounds, and 4 assists while shooting 44% from the field, 34% from 3, and 81% from the line. He is one of the best microwave scorers in the league. He's a natural at getting buckets, and although he isn't shooting great from 3 this year, he has one of the cleanest floaters in the entire NBA. He's 10th in the NBA in shots within the non-restricted area, which is about 5 to 9 feet from the rim. He's just really smooth and unpredictable once he gets into the lane. He's also near the top 10 in drives per game, so he's actually one of the best drivers and finishers in the league this season. He's averaging 4.4 assists per game, which is his career high, so he's really improved in this area too. And this was much needed because the Jazz don't really have a true point guard, especially since Mike Conley went to the Timberwolves. Over Clarkson's last 7 games, he's averaging 6.8 8 assists per game, so he's really taking over the playmaking department. And it's not really a big surprise either, because he's always had that type of potential and ability. However, on the defensive end, he's statistically one of the worst in the NBA. But hey, you can't be good at everything. Up next, their rookie, Walker Kessler, who's averaging 8 points, 8 rebounds, and 1 assist, while shooting 72% from the field. On the offensive end, he is really active on the inside. He's 11th in the NBA in points off of putbacks per game. His height and enormous wingspan plays a huge role here, but he earns all of those points by making great hustle plays and second efforts. But his offense isn't really the reason he's in on the Rookie of the Year race, because this rookie is actually one of the best defensive centers in the league already. He's 4th in the NBA in blocks per game with 2.3, but his defensive excellence does not stop there, because he's also 2nd in the NBA in contested twos and 8th in contested shots per game. And he's also in the top tier of the defensive LeBron metric, which measures a player's defensive impact per 100 possessions. And the only 2 players in front of him are Jaren Jackson Jr. and Nick Claxton, 2 defensive Player of the Year candidates. Is it too early to start calling him an elite defensive center in year 1? We don't think so. And just to pour some gasoline on this fire, he's been leading the NBA in blocks since the All-Star break with 3.8. Move over, Rudy Gobert. The NBA's next great defensive center may have already arrived. But he's not the only one putting up solid numbers, because Colin Sexton's averaging 14 points and 3 assists while shooting 50% from the field, 82% from the free throw line, and 41% from 3 on 2 attempts. He's a solid point guard, but his injury concerns, along with him being a below-average defender, is really affecting his career. He is just 24 years old, so he does have the time to start turning things around, but honestly, we don't think he's the Jazz's point guard of the future. He just doesn't feel like the right fit with where they're going. But who knows? Maybe he can grow into an unexpected role before the end of the season. Now let's talk about their power forward, Kelly Olynyk, who's one of the more underrated role players in the league. He's averaging 12 points, 5.8 rebounds, and a career-high 3.4 assists per game while shooting 39% from 3 and 85% from the line. So the 31-year-old has turned himself into a quality starter. He's a really good stretch 4, and he even has the ability to take you off the dribble and get to the cup. And just like Markkanen and Kessler, he's pretty good on the boards as well, averaging 8.8 rebounds over his last 7 games, which hints why the Jazz are 5th in the NBA in rebounds. And on defense, he for sure isn't elite, but he competes, and sometimes that's all you can ask for. And coming off the bench, they have Chris Dunn, who's averaging 12 points, 4 rebounds, and 5 assists while shooting 50% from the field and just over 40% from 3 on 2 attempts. He's only played in just a handful of games this season, but he's a valuable two-way point guard who can get things done on both ends. And then you have Talen Horton-Tucker, who's having a decent year, as well as Ochai Agbaji and Udoka Azubuike. But now, let's go back to the biggest question. How far can the Jazz go, led by Markkanen? And the answer to that is tough, because they have a good offense, they have an all-star and a borderline all-star scoring a majority of the points, they're a decent shooting team, elite rebounding team, and they're 9th in the NBA in assists, and all of those stats make things look extremely promising, until you see their defense. And like we mentioned earlier, they're 24th in defensive rating, so basically in the bottom tier. And trading away Jared Vanderbilt and Mike Conley definitely made it a lot worse on that end of the floor. So on offense, they are one of the best, but that won't be enough when going against elite two-way teams like the Suns, Grizzlies, Clippers, and even the Lakers. So that's our answer. If the Jazz want to become an elite contending team, they have to first find a better true point guard option. And of course, beef up their defense. And with a few offseason moves, that could happen. But when you have Colin Sexton, Jordan Clarkson, and Kelly Olynyk in your starting lineup, it's going to be pretty hard to stop teams from putting up numbers. But what do you think? How far do you think Lauri Markkanen can take the Utah Jazz? Let us know in the comments down below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.